My name is Daniel Moore, and for most of my life I believed loyalty was a currency. You give it long enough, consistently enough, and eventually it pays you back. I was wrong. At the time all of this started, I was 41 years old. Married for 15 years. One daughter. A quiet house in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. The kind of place where nothing dramatic ever seems to happen, and when it does, people pretend it didn't. I worked in corporate procurement for a mid-sized manufacturing firm. Nothing glamorous. No corner office. But it paid well, and more importantly, it was stable. I was the guy they trusted with contracts, vendor relationships, and internal approvals. If money moved through the company, my signature was usually somewhere on the paperwork. My wife, Emily, worked in our different department, different floor, same building. And before you ask, no, we didn't meet at work. We met years earlier, when life was simpler, and betrayal felt like a foreign concept. We married young, built things slowly, bought the house after saving for years, had our daughter late, after a miscarriage we never really talked about but never forgot either. By all outward measures, we were solid. Not passionate, not exciting, but solid. And I thought that was enough. The first crack wasn't obvious. It never is. It started with timing. Emily began staying late at work more often. Not every night. Just enough that it didn't seem suspicious. She'd text me around 6 or 7, saying there was an issue with employee compliance, or an exit interview that ran long, or paperwork she just wanted to finish. Our excuses are convenient like that. Vague. Administrative. Boring. I didn't question it. I cooked dinner. Helped our daughter with homework. Watched the news. Fell asleep on the couch more nights than I care to admit. The second crack was emotional. She stopped telling me things. Not the big things, those stayed the same. But the small ones vanished. No more random stories from her day. No more complaining about coworkers. No more laughing about office drama. When I asked how her day was, I got summaries instead of details. Fine. Busy. Same answers. Every time. I told myself it was stress. I told myself everyone goes through phases. I told myself marriage isn't supposed to feel like a movie. Then came the phone. Emily had never hidden her phone from me. Ever. We knew each other's passwords. We'd hand our phones back and forth without thinking. If hers buzzed while she was in the shower, it'd bring it to her. If mine rang while I was driving, she'd answer. That changed quietly. Her phone was suddenly always face down. Always within reach. Always on silent. If a notification came through, she'd glance at it quickly and swipe it away. Not panic. Not fear. Just control. That's what stuck with me. Control. I didn't accuse her. I didn't snoop. Not yet. Because here's the truth no one likes to admit. When you sense something is wrong, you don't want confirmation. You want reassurance. And part of me was afraid that if I looked too closely, I wouldn't be able to unsee what I found. The third crack came from someone else. A guy named Mark. Mark worked in operations. We'd crossed paths plenty of times over the years. Not friends. Not enemies. Just familiar faces in passing. The kind of guy you nod at in the hallway. One afternoon, as we were both waiting for the elevator, he asked me something casual. Hey, how's Emily doing? It wasn't the question. It was the way he said her name. Too familiar. Too comfortable. I answered politely. She's good. Busy, as usual. Mark smiled. A strange, tight smile. Yeah, he said. She's been busy. The elevator doors opened. We stepped inside. The moment passed. But that sentence stayed with me for days. That night, I lay awake next to my wife, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe. And for the first time in 15 years, a thought crossed my mind that I couldn't shake. What if I don't actually know her anymore? I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions. Instead, I started paying attention. And that's where everything truly began. Once you start paying attention, patterns don't hide for long. They just wait for you to stop lying to yourself. I didn't turn into a paranoid husband overnight. I didn't suddenly start checking her phone or interrogating her schedule. What I did instead was something far more dangerous. I observed. I noticed that Emily's late nights followed a rhythm. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and sometimes Fridays, but only every other week. On those nights, she came home different. Not guilty. Not nervous. Energized. Shed walked through the door lighter somehow. Her shoulders relaxed. Her voice softer. Shed kissed me on the cheek like muscle memory instead of desire, head straight for the shower, and hummed to herself while the water ran. That part hurt more than anger ever could. Because guilt looks messy. Happiness looks clean. I tested something small. One Tuesday afternoon, I texted her around 5. Do you want me to start dinner, or are you going to be late? Normally, I'd get an answer within minutes. That day, nothing. An hour passed. Then 2. At 7:43 p.m., my phone buzzed. Sorry, crazy evening. I'll grab something on the way home. Don't wait up. No explanation. No details. Just distance, wrapped in politeness. She got home close to 10. Smelled faintly like citrus soap and something else I couldn't place. Not perfume. Not cologne. Something neutral. Safe. Someone else's environment. I didn't say a word. Neither did she. That silence became its own language. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more things. Her wardrobe changed. Nothing drastic, but intentional. New brass. Different underwear. Clothes chosen with care on days she worked late, and thrown together on days she came straight home. She shaved more often. You don't notice things like that when you're happy. You notice them when your mind starts connecting dots you wish didn't exist. I started replaying moments from the past year. Times Shed snapped at me for no reason. Times Shed seemed emotionally unavailable, almost annoyed by my presence. Times Shed shut down conversations instead of engaging in them. All the moments I'd written off as stress. I finally did something I'd avoided for weeks. I checked her social media. Not her messages. Not her DMs. Just her public activity. Everything looked normal at first glance. Family photos. Work-related posts. Comments from coworkers and friends. But buried underneath, I noticed something subtle. One name. Over and over. Mark. He liked everything. Every photo. Every post. And not just likes. Comments. Inside jokes. Short phrases. Familiar banter. Nothing explicit. Nothing incriminating. Just enough to tell me they weren't strangers. I clicked his profile. I wasn't blocked. That almost disappointed me. Scrolling through his photos felt invasive, but necessary. Group shots from work events. Holiday parties. Team dinners. And there she was. In the background of more photos than coincidence would allow. Standing close. Always close. In one photo, his hand rested on her lower back. In another, they leaned toward each other in a way that excluded everyone else. No one would call it proof. But proof isn't what convinces you. Consistency is. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay next to her, watching the soft rise and fall of her chest, and realized something terrifying. If I confronted her now, she'd deny it. She'd cry. She'd tell me I was imagining things. And I wouldn't be able to prove otherwise. Worse, I might still believe her. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to accuse her. I was going to wait until the truth had no place left to hide. I started documenting everything. Dates. Times. Behavior changes. Not emotionally. Methodically. Like a man preparing for an audit instead of a divorce. I checked our shared phone plan one evening, half expecting to feel guilt. What I felt instead was calm. The data was there. Call durations. Text frequency. One number appeared more than any other, second only to mine. Mark. Long calls. Late at night. During work hours. On the same day she stayed late. I didn't read messages. I didn't need to. The pattern told the story. And that's when something inside me shifted. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Detachment. I stopped initiating affection. Stopped asking questions. Stopped trying to fix something I no longer believed existed. Emily noticed. Of course she did. She started asking if I was okay. If work was stressing me out. If I was pulling away. I told her the truth, just not the whole truth. I'm tired, I said. I need space. She accepted that explanation far too easily. Because she already had somewhere else to go. That's when I understood the real danger of what she'd done. She didn't just betray me. She replaced me. And I knew then this wasn't going to end with forgiveness. It was going to end with exposure. And I was going to make sure the timing hurt. There's a moment in every betrayal where curiosity dies. Not because you've learned everything out, but because you've learned enough. For me, that moment came on a Thursday night. Emily told me she'd be late again. Same excuse. Same tone. Same calm confidence that I wouldn't question it. I nodded. Said nothing. But instead of settling into my usual routine, I opened my laptop and logged into our carrier account again. Not out of desperation, this time out of confirmation. I wasn't looking for proof anymore. I was looking for finality. The call log refreshed. Mark's number appeared again. 46 minutes. Then another call. Then texts, back to back, long after midnight. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, waiting for something to happen inside me. Anger, grief, shock. Nothing came. Just clarity. That's when I realized something most people never admit out loud. By the time you need proof, the relationship is already over. The proof isn't for you. It's for what comes next. Emily came home close to 11. She smelled clean. To clean. She smiled at me with the softness reserved for people who feel safe. "How was your night?" she asked. "Quiet," I said. She nodded, relieved. She didn't know why, but she felt the tension lift. That night, lying beside her, I made the decision that changed everything. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to fight for answers. I wasn't going to beg for honesty. I was going to let her keep lying while I prepared. From that day forward, I became someone else. I stopped reacting. I stopped asking where she'd been. Stopped caring how late she came home. Stopped wondering who she was texting. And in its place, something colder took over. Precision. I started backing up data quietly. Screenshots. Logs. Timelines. Nothing emotional. Everything factual. I kept my tone neutral. My behavior predictable. I became the version of myself she least suspected, the disengaged husband who was just tired. And she bought it. That's the thing about people who cheat. They don't fear silence. They fear unpredictability. So I gave her the opposite. I became boring. No arguments. No suspicion. No accusations. Just space. And the more space I gave her, the more confident she became. She stopped covering her tracks as carefully. Stopped spacing out messages. Stopped hiding her schedule as much. Because she thought she'd won. Meanwhile, I started planning my exit like a professional operation. I consulted an attorney under the guise of financial planning. Moved money slowly, deliberately, in ways that wouldn't raise alarms. Secured documents. Backups. Copies. I wasn't preparing for a divorce. I was preparing for a reveal. The moment where she wouldn't get to explain. Where there would be no narrative to spin. No tears that could rewrite facts. By the time she noticed something was wrong, really wrong, it would already be over. One night, she asked me something that almost made me laugh. "Are you still happy?" she said, curled up beside me on the couch. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time, I felt nothing. "I don't know," I said. "I think I'm changing." She smiled. Touched my arm. "I think we both are," she said. She had no idea how right she was. Because the man sitting next to her wasn't deciding whether to stay. He was deciding how clean the break would be. And from that point on, everything I did had a single purpose. To make sure that when the truth finally surfaced, there would be no coming back from it. Not for her. Not for us. And not for the life she thought she still controlled. Once I made the decision, time slowed down. Not in the cinematic way where everything feels dramatic and sharp, but in a dull, grinding way. Each day felt stretched, deliberate. Like every hour existed for a reason, even when nothing seemed to happen. That was the point. Emily believed she was in control. From her perspective, the marriage had quietly shifted in her favor. I wasn't asking questions. I wasn't demanding attention. I wasn't suspicious anymore. I had become predictable, manageable, safe. And safety makes people careless. She started staying out later. Not just working late, but changing patterns altogether. Sometimes she wouldn't text at all until she was already on her way home. Other nights she'd send a message that felt rehearsed, like she'd written it hours earlier and scheduled it in her head. Running behind. "Don't wait up." I always replied the same way. "Okay." No emojis. No follow-up questions. No emotional punctuation. That single word became my shield. She stopped checking in on me emotionally. Stopped asking if I was okay. Stopped pretending she cared about the distance between us. Instead, she focused on managing appearances. She'd leave her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter sometimes. She'd talk openly about work again, carefully edited stories with names removed. She'd even initiate small gestures of affection, like holding my hand in public or kissing my cheek when our daughter was nearby. It wasn't love. It was maintenance. And the longer it went on, the clearer something became to me. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of being exposed. That distinction mattered. I began pushing gently against the edges of her confidence. Nothing obvious. Nothing confrontational. It mentioned Mark casually. Not accusingly. Just neutrally. How's Mark doing? Still busy in operations? She'd paused just a fraction of a second too long before answering. Oh. Yeah. I think so. Her voice never cracked. Her eyes never darted. But her breathing changed. Once I noticed that, I couldn't unnotice it. I started doing things out of character. Coming home later than usual. Leaving the house without explaining where I was going. Spending more time on my phone. When she asked what I was doing, I smiled and said, just stuff. The same vagueness she'd used on me for months. I watched her slowly unravel. She began texting more often. Calling me randomly during the day. Asking questions she'd never cared about before. What time will you be home? Are you going somewhere tonight? You've been quiet lately. I answered politely. Calmly. Never fully. The irony was almost unbearable. A woman actively betraying her husband, now afraid he might be doing the same. At night, lying next to her, I could feel the tension in her body. The subtle restlessness. The way she'd turned toward me, then away, unsure of her place. She started initiating intimacy again. Not with passion. With urgency. Like she was trying to reclaim something she sensed slipping. I refused gently. Not tonight. I'm tired. Another time. Each rejection chipped away at her certainty. And in the background, I kept building. Every call. Every message. Every late night. Cataloged. Dated. Organized. I wasn't rushing anymore. Because the longer I waited, the deeper she buried herself. One evening, as we sat across from each other at dinner, she asked me something that told me everything I needed to know. You're not seeing someone else, are you? I looked up from my plate. Met her eyes. And for the first time, I didn't soften my expression. I don't know, I said. Would that matter? Her face drained of color. In that moment, I saw it clearly, the fear, the guilt, the panic she'd managed to suppress for months. She reached across the table and touched my hand. I just don't want to lose you, she said. I nodded slowly, neither confirming nor denying, because by then, I already had. And from that moment on, the countdown began. She just didn't know it yet. People don't get caught because they're reckless. They get caught because they get comfortable. By the time Emily started worrying about me, she had already stopped worrying about herself. She still thought the danger was external, that if something went wrong, it would be because I suspected something. She never considered the possibility that the damage was already done. Her mistake wasn't dramatic. It was small, careless, human. It happened on a Friday. She told me she'd be home late again. Different excuse this time, team drinks after work. She even laughed about it, like she was trying to sound normal. Don't wait up, she said, grabbing her keys. I won't, I replied. She left in a good mood. That was the first red flag. An hour later, my phone buzzed. Not from her. From an unfamiliar number. Just one message. Hey, this is Mark. I think Emily may have left her laptop in the conference room. Is she with you? I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Had never contacted me before. Never crossed that boundary. Which meant one thing. Something had gone wrong. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I walked into the home office and powered on the desktop he'd been using for months to store everything. Logs, screenshots, notes, timelines. I pulled up the latest entries and compared dates. Then I replied. No, she's out with coworkers. Why? 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally. Never mind. Sorry to bother you. But it was already too late. Because that message told me everything. Mark was panicking. And if he was panicking, it meant Emily had lost control of something, information, timing, or a story she couldn't keep straight anymore. She came home just after midnight. Quiet. Tense. She went straight to the kitchen instead of the bedroom. Opened the fridge. Closed it. Opened it again. I watched her from the couch. "Everything okay?" I asked. She flinched. "Yeah," she said too quickly. "Just tired." She didn't sit next to me. Didn't touch me. Didn't even look at me for more than a second at a time. Instead, she said something she'd never said before. "Do you trust me?" The question landed like a dropped glass. I muted the TV. "Why wouldn't I?" I asked. She swallowed. "No reason. Work's been weird lately." There it was. The shift. She wasn't trying to reassure me anymore. She was trying to protect herself. That night, she slept facing away from me, tense and rigid. I could feel the distance between our backs like a physical thing. The next morning, she hovered. Asked if I had plans. Asked if I was okay. Asked if everything between us was fine. I gave her what she wanted. Reassurance. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. She smiled with visible relief. And that's when I knew the mistake had fully set in. Because when someone believes the threat has passed, they stop being careful. By Monday, Mark's number appeared more frequently than ever in the logs. Longer calls. More messages. Desperation creeping into the timing. Late-night texts. Early morning calls. They weren't celebrating anymore. They were managing fallout. And that's when Emily did the one thing I'd been waiting for. She confided in someone else. Not me. A coworker. Someone who didn't know the full story. Someone who didn't owe her loyalty. I found out because that person reached out to me. Anonymously. One short message. "You don't know me, but I thought you should know what's going on. You deserve better." Attached was a photo. Not explicit. Not dramatic. Just undeniable. Emily and Mark. Together. Outside of work. Too close to explain away. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt relief. Because now the truth wasn't just mine. It had started to spread. And once that happens, you don't control how it ends. You only decide when. I closed my laptop, looked around the house, and began preparing for the moment when pretending would no longer be necessary. Because the next move wasn't about patience. It was about timing. And Emily had just handed me the perfect one. I didn't confront her the day I got the photo. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't slam doors. Didn't demand explanations. Because by then, confrontation felt unnecessary. The truth had already detached itself from her control. All I had to do was stop holding it. I spent the next few days moving quietly. Not sneaking, detaching. I finalized paperwork with my attorney. Transferred the last documents. Backed up everything one final time and locked it away. Then I waited for the right moment. It came on a Wednesday evening. Emily came home early for once. Too early. She looked nervous but determined, like someone who had rehearsed a speech in their head all day. "We need to talk," she said. I nodded and sat across from her at the dining table. The same table where we'd eaten birthday cakes, helped with homework, planned vacations that never happened. She took a breath. "I've been unhappy," she began. I didn't know how to say it. I didn't want to hurt you. I let her continue. She talked about distance, about feeling unseen, about growing apart. Every sentence carefully constructed to sound reasonable. When she finished, she waited. For anger, for sadness, for forgiveness. Instead, I slid an envelope across the table. She frowned and opened it. The color drained from her face almost instantly. Divorce papers. Her hand started shaking. "What is this?" she whispered, like she didn't already know. "This," I said calmly, "is the end of us." She started crying. Hard. Loud. The kind of crying meant to pull someone back in. "I never meant for it to happen like this," she said. "It was a mistake." I stood up. "No," I replied. "It was a choice. Made repeatedly." She tried to speak again, but I didn't let her. "I know about Mark. I know how long it's been going on. I know about the messages, the calls, the nights you said you were working late." Her mouth opened, closed. I wasn't done. "I also know that this isn't about him," I continued. "It's about you deciding I was replaceable instead of talking to me." She collapsed into the chair. "I'm not here to argue," I said. "I'm here to leave." I packed what I needed that night. Nothing dramatic. Nothing symbolic. Just essentials. At the door, she asked the one question people always ask when they realize it's over. Is there anything I can do? I paused. Yes, I said. Don't contact me again unless it's through lawyers. Then I left. No yelling. No final speech. No victory lap. Just silence. Weeks later, I heard pieces of what followed. The story unraveled at work. Questions turned into investigations. Friends stopped calling her. Mark disappeared from her life the moment things became real. That's how affairs end, not in passion, but in abandonment. As for me, life didn't suddenly become perfect. It became quiet. And that quiet felt like freedom. I moved into a smaller place. Learned how to live with less noise. Spent more time with my daughter. Stopped replaying conversations in my head. The anger faded first. Then the resentment. Then, finally, the need to explain. I don't hate her. Hate requires energy. I just don't carry her anymore. And that's the part people misunderstand about endings like this. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about release. About choosing yourself when someone else chose to walk away while still standing next to you. I didn't win. I left. And that was enough.